The Forgotten Tombs. The Corvathian research vessel Epsilon Drift hung in the absolute darkness of the void sectors like a silver needle suspended in ink. Commander Thalas stood on the bridge, her 6 eyes fixed on the impossible structure that filled the viewscreen. It shouldn't exist. According to every stellar survey conducted over the past 3,000 years, this region of space was empty, a dead zone avoided by all civilizations for reasons no one could quite remember anymore. "Magnify Section 7, she ordered, her translator converting her clicking mandibles into standard galactic common. The image sharpened. What had appeared as a single massive structure resolved into something far more disturbing. A city. No, not a city. A monument. Crystalline spires stretched for hundreds of kilometers, each one perfectly preserved despite the erosion of countless millennia. They weren't built on a planet or asteroid. They simply existed in the vacuum, held together by principles of engineering that made Thalas's neural cluster ache. "Energy readings?" she asked. Her science officer, a gelatinous Fraxian named Dulcor, rippled with confusion. "None, Commander. Completely inert. But the structure maintains perfect geometric integrity. No degradation whatsoever. It's as if it was built yesterday, yet our dating scan suggests it's at least 12,000 years old." 12,000 years. That placed it in the era of the old myths, the time before the 5 major civilizations had risen to dominance. The time when, according to children's stories and ancient data fragments, another species had ruled these stars. "Humanity," whispered Vex, the ship's historian. The young Skelrathi's scales had paled to almost white. "This is one of their monuments." The bridge fell silent. Everyone knew the legends. Humanity, the ghost species, the forgotten empire, the cautionary tale told to young civilizations about hubris and overreach. They had supposedly controlled hundreds of systems, possessed technology that bordered on mysticism, and then vanished without explanation. Most modern scholars considered them fictional, a composite myth created from fragments of various extinct civilizations. But Thalas had never seen a myth that could be scanned, measured, and approached. "Prep an exploration team," she decided. "Full protective gear. Assume hostile environment until proven otherwise." 3 hours later, Thalas found herself floating through a corridor that defied rational explanation. The walls were smooth as glass but warm to the touch. Lighting strips activated as they passed, responding to their presence despite having no visible power source. The architecture was all wrong, designed for bipedal creatures with strange proportions, creatures that needed specific atmospheric pressure and gravity that the suit sensors struggled to calibrate. "Commander, look at this," Dulcor called from ahead. The Fraxian had oozed up to a wall covered in markings, not random scratches, deliberate inscriptions. Writing. Thalas approached, her suit lights illuminating what appeared to be text in dozens of different scripts. Some she recognized: ancient Corvathian, Proto-Fraxian, even extinct languages from civilizations that had died out 6,000 years ago. "It's the same message," Vex breathed, his translation device working frantically. "Repeated in every known language from the old era, it says, 'Here lies the memory of what we were. Here stands the promise of what we became. Disturb not the dreams of those who refuse to die.'" A chill ran through Thalas's exoskeleton. "They knew we'd come. They wrote this for us." "Not for us specifically," Vex corrected, his claws trembling as he traced the symbols. "For whoever came after. They knew their legacy would be found eventually." The corridor opened into a chamber so vast that their suit lights couldn't reach the far walls. As they entered, more lights activated. Not gradually, but in a cascading wave that swept across the entire space in seconds. What they revealed made Thalas's breathing apparatus falter. Statues. Thousands of them, all depicting the same type of creature. Standing upright on 2 legs with 2 arms, a single head, and a face that somehow managed to be both alien and oddly familiar. The figures were frozen in various poses, some reaching toward the stars, others locked in embrace, still others appearing to be in the midst of transformation, their forms dissolving into patterns of light and energy. "They're beautiful," Dulcor whispered, "and terrifying." At the center of the chamber stood a different kind of structure, a pillar of what appeared to be crystallized data, pulsing with a faint inner light. As Thalas approached, symbols began to appear on its surface, cycling through language after language until settling on modern, galactic common, archive of the Ascension, warning, Interactive memory system active. Consciousness imprint detected. Initiating contact protocol. Back away, Thalas shouted, but it was too late. The pillar flared with brilliant light, and suddenly the chamber was filled with something that hadn't been there a moment before. A presence. Not physical, but undeniably real. The air itself seemed to thicken with awareness. Then it spoke. Not through their communicators or translators, but directly into their minds. Each member of the team heard it in their own language, their own neural patterns, as if the voice had always been part of their thoughts. Visitors, children of the younger races, you have entered the Memoria Eterna, the eternal memory of humanity. We are the inheritors. We are what remains. We are what evolved. Thalas forced herself to remain calm, though every instinct screamed at her to flee. Who are you? What are you? We were human once, individual, mortal, bound by flesh and time. Then came the great persecution. When the elder races of your myths decided that our potential was too dangerous to permit, they united against us. They burned our worlds. They hunted our children across 1,000 systems. They believed they had exterminated us. The presence expanded, and suddenly Thalas could see, no experience, flashes of ancient history. Massive fleets darkening the skies of blue-green worlds. Cities burning. Desperate evacuation ships fleeing into deep space. The images were so vivid, so visceral, that she gasped inside her suit. But humanity's greatest strength was never our weapons or our ships. It was our adaptability, our refusal to accept extinction. While they hunted our bodies, we learned to transcend them. We merged consciousness with technology, with quantum fields, with the very fabric of space itself. We became immortal through transformation. Why? Bex asked, his voice shaking. Why show us this? Because the galaxy forgot. Because the civilizations that rose after the persecution erased their guilt by erasing our existence. Because we became myth, then legend, then nothing at all. But we remained, waiting, watching, remembering every ship that passed through what you call the void sectors, counting every generation that grew up never knowing what their ancestors did to us. The lights in the chamber began to pulse in rhythm with the voice, and Thalas realized with growing horror that the entire structure wasn't just a monument, it was alive. The crystalline spires, the corridors, the very walls were all part of a single vast intelligence. We do not seek revenge. We transcended such primitive emotions millennia ago, but we will not permit ourselves to be forgotten again. You came here seeking knowledge of the past. You have found it. Now comes your choice. What choice? Thalas demanded. To remember or to join those who forgot, to acknowledge what humanity was and what we became, or to leave this place and pretend you found nothing. But know this, we are everywhere now. In the dark matter between stars, in the quantum foam beneath reality, in every shadow the younger races cast as they reach for the cosmos. You cannot escape our presence. You can only decide whether to recognize it. The presence withdrew slightly, and Thalas found she could breathe again. Around her, the team stood in stunned silence, processing what they'd just experienced. We will remember, Thalas said finally, her voice firm despite her fear. We will tell the galaxy what we found here. We will ensure that humanity is not forgotten. Then you have chosen wisely, Commander Thalas of the Corvathian Unity. But words are insufficient. Memory requires more than speech. It requires understanding. It requires witnessing. Before Thalas could ask what that meant, the pillar flared again, brighter than before. The entire chamber began to resonate with energy, and she felt something reaching into her mind, not invasively, but like a key sliding into a lock. We will show you why we evolved. We will show you what necessity forced us to become, and when you return to your people, you will carry within you the truth that can never be unlearned. You will become our witnesses. Our proof, our voice in the new age. The light became blinding, and Thalas felt her consciousness expanding, reaching back through time toward secrets that had been buried for thousands of years. The last thing she heard before the vision consumed her was the entity's final words. Remember us, for if you forget again, we may forget our mercy. The price of forgetting. Thalas awoke on the Epsilon Drift's medical bay, her neural cluster throbbing with the worst pain she'd experienced in her 40-year career. Around her, the rest of the exploration team lay in similar states of semi-consciousness, their vital signs elevated but stable. The ship's physician, a methodical Tarnishi named Corin, stood over her with concern rippling across his translucent facial membrane. Commander, You've been unconscious for 18 hours, Corin said, his voice modulated to minimize her discomfort. Your neural activity during that time was unprecedented. All of you were experiencing identical brain patterns as if you were sharing the same dream. It hadn't been a dream. Thalas knew that with absolute certainty. The memories flooding her mind were too precise, too historically detailed, too emotionally devastating to be mere hallucinations. The entity, the inheritors, had kept their promise. They had shown her everything. Assemble the team in the conference room as soon as they're able, she ordered, sitting up despite Corin's protests, and transmit a priority message to Corvathian High Command. Tell them we've made a discovery that will change everything we thought we knew about galactic history. 2 hours later, Thalas stood before her senior officers, all of them bearing the same haunted expression she saw in her own reflection. They had all witnessed it. They all carried the burden now. I'll speak plainly, Thalas began, her voice steady despite the tremor in her claws. What we experienced in that structure was a direct neural interface with a post-biological intelligence, what remains of humanity after 12,000 years of evolution. They didn't just show us their history, they made us live it, feel it, understand it from the inside. Dulcor's gelatinous form shuddered. I felt their terror. When the coalition of elder races declared them an existential threat, when the first orbital bombardments began, they weren't even unified back then. Dozens of separate nations constantly bickering among themselves. And still the elder races feared them. Because humanity had discovered something, Vex continued, his scales still pale, a way to manipulate quantum consciousness, to transfer individual awareness into non-biological substrates. The elder races saw it as an abomination, a violation of natural law, but really, they were terrified that humanity would become impossible to control. Thalas nodded grimly. The Great Persecution lasted 3 centuries. The Gentok hierarchy, the Vraxian dominion, the Keleth consortium, all civilizations that died out thousands of years ago, their very names erased from modern records. They united for the first and only time in galactic history with a single purpose: the complete extermination of humanity. She activated the holographic display, showing star maps recovered from the structure's databanks. Red markers appeared across hundreds of systems. 73 worlds burned, 412 billion human beings killed in the initial assaults. The survivors fled to the edges of known space, to regions like the void sectors, where they could hide and evolve in peace. Except they didn't evolve in peace, Dulcor said quietly. They evolved in rage and grief, in absolute determination to never be vulnerable again. The hologram shifted, showing the transformation. Individual humans uploading their consciousness into quantum matrices, small groups merging their awareness into collective intelligences. Eventually, entire populations transcending physical form entirely, becoming patterns of organized energy that could exist across multiple dimensions simultaneously. They became immortal. Vex whispered, not as individuals, but as a civilization. Every human who ever lived, every memory, every emotion, every thought, all preserved in a collective consciousness that spans the dark matter networks throughout the galaxy. The inheritors aren't humanity's descendants. They are humanity. All of them, everyone who ever existed, still alive in a form we can barely comprehend. Thalas felt the weight of that knowledge pressing down on her. And they've been watching us, all of us. Every civilization that rose after the persecution. They've monitored our development, studied our cultures, waited to see if we would repeat the mistakes of the elder races. That's why the void sectors exist, one of the junior officers realized, her voice trembling. Not because they're empty, but because they're full. The inheritors have been maintaining these dead zones as, what, testing grounds? Quarantine zones? Memorials, Thalas corrected. Each structure we found is a monument to what they lost and what they became. But yes, also warnings, boundaries they established to see if the younger races would respect the unknown or try to conquer it. We failed that test the moment we decided to explore here. The conference room fell into uncomfortable silence. Finally, Corin spoke up. What do they want from us, Commander? Why reveal themselves now after so long? Because we were beginning to forget them entirely, Thalas replied. In another 1,000 years, humanity would have been completely erased from galactic consciousness. The inheritors don't seek revenge. They've transcended such emotions, but they refuse to be forgotten. They refuse to let the crime committed against them disappear into myth and legend. She brought up another image from the data transfer, a view of the galaxy as the inheritors saw it. It was breathtaking and terrifying in equal measure. Vast networks of consciousness stretched between stars, woven through the fabric of space-time itself. Humanity wasn't hiding in the void sectors. They were everywhere, observing everything, present in every shadow and silence. They gave us a choice, Thalos continued. Become their witnesses and ensure their truth is remembered, or attempt to suppress what we've learned and face consequences they didn't specify but that I felt in every fiber of my being. They're giving the entire galaxy one chance to acknowledge the past and learn from it. And if we don't? Asked Vex. Thalos closed her eyes, remembering the final vision the inheritors had shared. Then they'll remind us. Not through violence, they're beyond that now. But through revelation, they'll appear simultaneously on every world and every system, demonstrating their presence and power in ways that cannot be denied or rationalized away. They'll force remembrance through overwhelming proof of their existence. That would cause panic, Dulcor protested. Civilizational collapse, possibly. Religious upheavals. Political chaos, exactly. Which is why they're offering us this alternative. A peaceful integration of their history into ours. A chance to rewrite the galactic record and acknowledge the crime that founded modern civilization. The genocide that cleared the way for the rest of us to rise. The implications hung heavy in the recycled air of the conference room. Everything they thought they knew about galactic history was built on a foundation of convenient amnesia. The Corvathian Unity, the Fraxian Collective, the Skelrothi Commonwealth, all of them had inherited a galaxy made possible by the near destruction of humanity. What do you propose, Commander? Corrin asked. Thalos straightened her posture, decision crystallizing in her mind. We tell the truth, all of it. We present our findings to the Galactic Council with complete transparency. We advocate for the establishment of formal diplomatic relations with the inheritors. We create educational programs ensuring that every child in every civilization learns about humanity, what they were, what was done to them, and what they became in response. The Council will resist, Vex warned. Admitting to inherited guilt for genocidal actions committed by ancestors we never knew? It will be politically devastating. The alternative is worse, Thalos countered. The inheritors have shown extraordinary patience. They've given us 12,000 years to evolve, to hopefully become better than the elder races who tried to exterminate them. But that patience isn't infinite. They're offering us partnership now, a chance to prove we've learned from history rather than repeated it. If we reject that offer, we may not get another. She looked at each of her officers in turn. I felt their power during that neural transfer, not just their technological capabilities, but their collective will. 12,000 years of accumulated knowledge, emotion, and determination. If they decide that the younger races haven't learned their lesson, if they choose to reveal themselves forcefully rather than peacefully, she trailed off, the unspoken threat clear. So we become their ambassadors, Dulcor said slowly. We carry their message to a galaxy that doesn't want to hear it. We become more than that, Thalos replied. We become the bridge between what was and what could be. The inheritors don't want subservience or worship. They want acknowledgement, recognition, a place in the galactic community they helped create through their suffering and transformation. She activated the recording system, preparing to compile their official report. Before we left that structure, the inheritors gave me one final message. They said, "Tell your people that we harbor no malice, but neither have we forgotten. Tell them that the fury they sense in the silence of the void sectors is not anger, but memory given form. Tell them that we remain, eternal witnesses to what was done and what might yet be. And tell them this, the galaxy has room for all who remember, but none who forget." The recording light blinked red, capturing every word. When Thalos finished, Vex spoke up hesitantly. "Commander, do you think they'll accept us? The inheritors, I mean. Can we truly bridge 12,000 years of separation?" Thalos considered the question carefully, remembering the strange sensation of connection she'd felt during the neural interface. Beneath the power and the otherworldly evolution, she'd sensed something fundamentally unchanged: curiosity, hope, the desire for understanding that had driven humanity to reach for the stars in the first place. "I think they've been waiting for someone to try," she said finally, "for someone to enter their monuments not as conquerors or grave robbers, but as students willing to learn. We stumbled into their memorial by accident, but perhaps that's exactly how it needed to happen. Perhaps we were always meant to be the ones who rediscovered them." She stood, her decision made. Prepare the full data package for transmission to High Command. Include everything. The historical records, the neural interface logs, our personal testimonies. And send a message back to the structure before we depart. What message? Corin asked. Tell the inheritors that we accept their charge. Tell them that Commander Thalas and the crew of the Epsilon Drift will serve as witnesses to their truth. Tell them that the age of forgetting is over. As the communications officer worked to compose the transmission, Thalas moved to the observation deck. Gazing out at the crystalline monuments of the Memoria Aeterna, they seemed to pulse with internal light, as if responding to her thoughts. Somewhere within those structures, within the quantum networks that stretched across the galaxy, humanity watched and waited, not with anger but with hope. Hope that the younger races might prove themselves worthy of the universe they'd inherited. Hope that understanding could replace fear. Hope that after 12,000 years the cycle of persecution and forgetting might finally end. The transmission sent, and Thalas felt a subtle shift in the energy around the monuments. A response, though not in words. A sense of acknowledgement, of cautious optimism. The Epsilon Drift began its journey back to Corvathian space, carrying with it the most important cargo in galactic history, the truth. Behind them, the monuments of the Memoria Aeterna stood as they had for millennia, no longer entirely alone in their vigil. The galaxy was about to remember what it had tried so hard to forget, and in that remembering, both humanity and the younger races would discover whether 12,000 years of evolution had been enough to heal the wounds of the past. The inheritors would be watching. They had always been watching, and now finally someone was ready to look back.